The derivative of f of x is this formula that uses this thing called the difference quotient. I'm going to show you how to set up and use this formula using this example. Now, before we begin, we need to make sure we have a good understanding of how functions work, because there's a lot of different kinds of functions that can be used for this. And as long as you're comfortable with functions, then setting up this formula should be no problem. So this function is showing us that when we put an x in the input here, we get x's in these other spots over here. Now for me, it's easier to think of it like if I remove the input x, then these other x's in the equation just become open parentheses. Now with everything as open parentheses, we're free to put in whatever we want into this function. So if we put another variable like a into the input, then we just fill the open parentheses with a's. And if we put something like a constant into the input, then we do the same thing with the open parentheses. And if we put an x into the input, then of course we get the same thing that we started with. So to use this formula, we're just going to add x plus h to the input. And just like before, we just put x plus h in the open parentheses. So this is the f of x plus h that we needed for the formula. We're just going to store that onto the side for a second. And we're also going to need f of x. So this is just the original function with x as the input. We're also going to store that onto the side for a second. And now we have everything we need to set up this formula. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the f of x plus h that we just wrote, and we're going to substitute that into the formula. And then the same thing with f of x, we're just going to substitute it right into the formula. Now when you're substituting them in, make sure you use brackets or parentheses, otherwise that minus sign is really going to mess you up. Okay, and now we're done setting up our formula. We're going to continue in just a bit, but before we do, if this has been at all helpful, could you please like and subscribe so I can continue making videos like this. Okay, back to the problem. So at some point we're going to want to apply this limit and substitute the h to 0, but we can't do that yet because then we'd be dividing by 0, which is undefined, and bad things happen when you divide by 0. So we're going to hold off on that for a bit, and we're going to work on simplifying this. First, I'm going to start with this minus sign, and I'm just going to distribute it to the stuff on the right side. Then I'm going to move on to the left side, and I'm just going to expand this x plus h squared. Next, I'm going to multiply it out. Then I'm going to move over to the right a little bit, and I'm going to distribute this 4. And now we're ready to remove the brackets. Next, we're going to be combining and canceling out like terms. So the x squared and negative x squared are going to cancel out. Next, the 1 and negative 1 are going to cancel out. And lastly, the 4x and negative 4x are going to cancel out. So we're going to remove those and clean it up. Next, we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by h. And we're just going to clean that up a bit, and this is what we're left with. Okay, so the whole point of all that simplifying was just to get it to this point where now we can substitute the h to 0. So we're just going to go ahead with the substitution, simplify it, and this is our answer. This is the derivative of f of x that we are looking for. And just to recap real fast, the first thing we did was we replaced all the x's with open parentheses. Then we inserted x plus h into those open parentheses. Next, we substituted f of x and the f of x plus h that we just wrote into the formula. Then we simplify and do a bunch of math stuff until we can substitute the h to 0 without making the denominator 0. And lastly, when it's finally ready, we just apply the substitution of h to 0 and then we simplify. And that's it. Thank you for watching. If you could like and subscribe, that would help me to make more videos like this.